What are you sure of? Are you sure the color of your hair? Are you sure the color of your suit? I'm just like, tell the American people, what are you sure of? You don't even know when you started preparing for the hearing? I mean, the biggest hearing of your life, and you have no clue? You can't remember when you started preparing for this hearing? Can you understand why those words seem hollow to the American people who are supposed to entrust their faith in you?
I assure you, the moment I received notification.
But you can't remember. You got a little Alzheimer's, dementia going? I mean, what, you can't remember.
I have several active investigations going on and an operational agency to run.
That's the head of Secret Service, who went from being the #1 in charge of guarding Cheetos and oatmeal at PepsiCo to #1 at the top law enforcement agency in the country.
Okay. All right. But you want to take accountability, right? The buck stops with you, right?
I am taking accountability.
Super. Then let's start with trying to answer some questions. You keep referring to the FBI. When asked how many shell casings were on the roof, you referred to the FBI. When asked if there were explosives in the car, you referred to the FBI. When asked if Crooks was acting alone, you referred to the FBI. See a common theme here? I can go on and on. My question is, who at the FBI should I speak with? Wait for it. Wait for it.
The FBI is responsible for the criminal
Is there a name?
I'm not certain.
I'm not certain.
Who at
All
the
right, here we go.
FBI
I'm
is
not
running the
certain. I
investigation.
don't know. Let me ask a different question. Have you been in communication with the FBI?
Yes, I have.
With whom?
I speak with the director and the deputy director.
Okay. And what have they shared with you about this investigation? So I'll give you an opportunity to answer again. Did they share with you how many shell casings were on the roof?
They have shared with me the evidence.
Did they
they've collected.
share with you how many shell casing were on the roof?
Yes.
Okay, how many were there?
I would refer to the FBI for their
How
investigation
many were there?
and their information that they need to share in their investigation.
So they've shared the information with you. You just don't want to share the information with us, correct?
We have concurrent investigations that are going on.
So they have shared this information with you. You know the answer to the question. You just refuse to answer the question from the member of Congress who has subpoenaed you to be here. Is there a different answer to that question? If you're supposed to be in charge, if the buck stops with you, how come you can't share the answers? What are you covering up? What are you hiding, my friend?
Let me tell you, it's very apparent at this point, after watching this hearing, that the DEI Secret Service Director, Kimberly Cheadle, aka Kimmy Cheetos, was covering up a lot when she was forced to appear before Congress to answer questions about what happened the day they allowed an attempt on the life of a protectee and a former president. First attempt in 43 years. This woman's refusal to answer questions was certainly unnerving. It was so bad she was forced to resign. We're going to get into it, but first, take a second to make sure you're subscribed to the channel and click the notification bell for all updates. Won't waste any time. Let's go ahead and jump back into it.
Was this a colossal failure?
It was a failure.
Yes or no? Was it a colossal failure is the question. Yes or no?
I have admitted this is a terrible.
This is a yes or no series of questions. Was this a colossal failure? Yes or no?
Yes.
Was this tragedy preventable? Yes or no?
Yes.
Has the Secret Service been transparent with this committee?
Yes.
Would you say the fact that we had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today as being transparent? Yes or no?
I have always been eager
Yes
to
or no?
come
You didn't
and
want to
talk
answer
to
the question.
committee.
We had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today. That is not transparent, by the way. You stated earlier, Secret Service is not political. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Would you say leaking your opening statement to Punchbowl News, Politico's Playbook, and Washington Post several hours before you sent it to this committee as being political? Yes or no?
I have no idea how my statement got out.
Well, that's bullshit.
Zero decorum whatsoever, and that's not cool. There's no reason why this congresswoman should have been up there with all this cursing. There's a way to communicate your thoughts to this lady in this hearing viewed by millions than the way she presented herself, out of order 1000%.
Has the Secret Service provided this committee a complete list of all law enforcement personnel that were there that day? Have you done that? Have you provided a list to the Oversight Committee? Yes or
I
no?
will have to get back to you on that.
That is a no. Have you provided all audio and video recordings in your possession to this committee, as we asked on July 15th? Yes or no?
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of shit today. You're just being completely dishonest.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
Chairman, I want to.
Come on.
We have to maintain decorum in this committee, no matter how
have you provided
upset we
any
get.
and all memos to this?
Yeah, this hood rat was out of order. I'm telling you, a hot hillbilly mess. And I didn't like that part, all that cursing. You need to be professional while you're doing this job that we're paying you to do. Not acting like you're on Love and Hip Hop DC. If she can't figure out another way to speak in this hearing as a U.S. Congresswoman, she should be ordered to a course with TI or some SAT prep and review the dictionary. This is absolutely crazy. Kimmy Cheetos is obviously wrong here. She should have been fired right away and locked up. However, that doesn't mean Nancy should be able to come out here acting like this. There's no reason to be up here cursing.
Committee that we've asked you on July 15th. Have you provided all memorandums within the Secret Service?
I would have to get back to you on
That is a no. You are being dishonest or lying. You're being dishonest here with this committee. These are important questions that the American people want answers to, and you're just dodging and talking around it in generalities. And we had to subpoena you to be here, and you won't even answer the questions. We have asked you repeatedly to answer our questions. This isn't hard. These are not hard questions. Have you provided us all communications from the Secret Service related to that day and that rally? Have you provided this committee? We've asked for this information on July 15th. Have you provided any of this information that this committee has asked of the Secret Service? Any of it?
I'll have to get back to you.
Have you even read this letter that we sent you? Did you even read this?
Yes.
Okay. And you have said you don't know, you have no idea. The answer is no. We haven't gotten a single document or piece of information or data from you or your agency in related to the rally that we have asked you for. So, was this attempted assassination of Donald Trump a failure of training or execution or both?
I think that those are answers that we need to
Training,
examine.
execution, or both? Which one?
I think those are answers.
All right. How many Secret Service personnel have lost their jobs due to this colossal failure?
At this time, none.
How many Secret Service personnel have been required to take a refresher course on how not to let people shoot Donald Trump?
Our personnel are currently operational. We are examining the facts of this investigation, and we will make the changes necessary.
What time did law enforcement become aware that there was an individual on the roof with a clear line of sight to President Trump?
I am still verifying timelines.
Of course, 9 days in, you have no answers. How many minutes went by between the time law enforcement saw and took photos of crooks and the shooting? How many minutes?
I am still verifying timelines.
57 minutes.
Yeah, like I said in the last video on Kimmy Cheetos, she was incompetent and unfit for this position, more concerned with recruiting women with her 30% female DEI goal versus making sure she had the right people in position that could adequately perform their duties. A complete failure. And not only was that a complete failure, but showing up to this hearing without providing any of the requested reports was also silly and shows her incompetence once again. She was forced to show up but didn't answer any questions.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Cheadle, I'd like to remind you that you're under oath. The site team has a senior supervisor, an advanced team, a protective intelligence team, a counter sniper element, and detail. Who was the agent in charge? How long has she been the agent in charge? And what is her Secret Service background?
Oh yeah, not only was the head of Secret Service a woman, you had 3 women, Charlie's Angels, the clueless crew, that was up there guarding Trump that day. And then the one in charge of the whole rally site, she was a woman too. Then how can we forget when this all happened, you had the clueless crew looking to the men, asking them OMG what to do. Yeah, but they're supposed to be in charge. Listen, I don't care how you feel about this. I don't want them guarding anybody. They shouldn't be guarding President Biden, Trump, the Obamas, the Bush family, the Clintons, or Kamala Harris and her family. This is silly. Stop picking people for their identity and pick the right people for the job. That's across the board.
So I'm not going to provide a name.
Why not? You're here to answer our questions.
Forum. I'm not going to provide names of.
You stated in your testimony, you said, I am here today to answer your questions.
That is correct.
Answer the question.
I'm not going to provide names of our personnel.
Why not?
Today.
The American people are demanding these answers from you today, Ms. Cheadle.
I will do the best to provide you accurate information based on the facts that I have at this time.
You're not answering our questions. The advance element coordinates with other intel or law enforcement partners, identifies threats and weaknesses at the sites and movements. We'd like a copy of the advance report. Have you brought it here with you today?
We will comply with the request for the documentation that has been requested.
When will that be, Ms. Cheadle? Because you should have brought it today.
I am certain that our personnel are working on obtaining all of that document.
I don't believe you, and neither do the people watching this hearing. You're not doing well, as Mr. Moskowitz informed you. You've been sitting here for over 3 hours, and I have you know the entire country is demanding you resign and demanding that you be fired if you do not resign. Things are not going well for you. You need to answer the questions. Was there a protective intelligence team, and what technical resources were utilized for that event, specifically drone or helicopter assets?
There were a number of technical assets that were deployed for that event, and there was a protective intelligence team that was assigned to that event.
Why was Crooks able to fly a drone over the entire area the day of the rally and the day of his assassination attempt?
To my knowledge, he did not fly the drone over the entire area.
How did he fly a drone over the area, period? Any part of the area?
Again, I would have to go back and check the timeline of when that took place and when the event.
Why didn't you bring the timeline with you today to answer our questions?
I don't have all of the answers on the timelines based on the criminal investigation.
Were you not prepared today to answer our questions?
I am prepared to answer the questions based on the information and wanted to be able to provide.
Do you have a timeline do you have a timeline at all from any of the day?
I have a timeline that does not have specifics.
That's shocking. That is absolutely unacceptable. That means you are a failure at your job.
Worst Secret Service failure in 43 years.
2 minutes before the shooting, while President Trump has been allowed to take the stage, people see Crooks laying on his stomach in a sniper position on the roof, and they're yelling he has a gun, and they are trying to alert law enforcement and Secret Service. Why was Crooks not shot by the snipers? Why was he allowed to be there?
As soon as the individual was identified as a threat, they were...
No. What do you consider to be a threat? A man with a gun laying in a sniper position, a man that had a backpack, a man that had a bicycle, a man that had a rangefinder. At what point is he determined a threat?
An individual with a backpack is not a threat. An individual with a rangefinder is not a threat.
What about a man laying on a building that has direct line of sight of President Trump with a gun that people are screaming and pointing out? Is that a threat, Ms. Cheadle?
Once that individual was identified, they were neutralized.
No, they were neutralized. Crooks was neutralized after he shot President Trump in the face, Ms. Cheadle. Is he only a threat once he fires the weapon?
He aimed at his face, but he missed. That's why he's still alive right now. He didn't blast him in his face. Yeah, he definitely tried to. So yeah, she's the leader. This is all Kimmy Cheeto's fault, along with the other woman that was in charge of the operation. They allowed that building to be open. They also allowed Crooks to fly a drone over the event. Yeah, all of this on their watch.
As soon as the counter sniper identified that individual, they were able to neutralize them.
How were people in the crowd? Okay, then let's just take it this way. People under your command did not consider him to be a threat, yet people in the crowd knew he had a gun and considered him to be a threat. That means that you are a complete failure as the director of the Secret Service, that people under your command don't perceive a man laying on a roof with direct line to the president with a gun. They don't perceive that to be a threat, yet the people in the crowd do. How is that possible?
That's the last question, but please answer the question, Ms. Director.
I'm not certain at this time how the information from the people in the crowd was relayed to any law enforcement personnel.
No, you knew, that everyone knew. The people there knew that there was a danger. They knew there was a threat to President Trump, and it was allowed to happen. Was there a stand-down order, Ms. Cheadle? Was there a conspiracy to kill President Trump?
Absolutely not.
Then how did this happen? And why are you still sitting here not turning in your letter of resignation?
Last question, but please answer, and then I'll recognize Ms. Presley. Please answer that question.
That is what we are investigating to determine.
We're waiting for your letter. We're waiting for your letter of resignation, and you really need to consider doing that before you leave today.
So we've heard a lot today that you can't answer because it's an ongoing investigation, that you're still figuring out the details, and that you won't answer basic questions. You've said 60 days for the investigation, but I simply don't think that's acceptable. Do you really plan to keep avoiding questions and the American people's questions, ours and the American people's questions, for the next 60 days?
I'm not avoiding questions. I want to make sure that I am providing factual and accurate information.
Certainly, but is there no in-between, right, between what is obviously a fact and what you can surmise from the details that you already have?
I assure you, when I have a full and complete report of what took place on that day, I will certainly come back and make that available.
Certainly. Studies indicate that the United States is experiencing increasing levels of political violence and tension. Does the Secret Service see increasing political violence as a threat to its work? And if so, how is the Secret Service adapting its strategies and protocols to account for increasing political violence?
We are constantly evaluating the threats that we receive and monitoring that, and we make adjustments on a daily basis to our protectees based on what those threats are and what actions we need to take.
Real quick, at what time was Secret Service aware of the active threat against President Trump? Director, what time?
So the Secret Service was aware that there was an individual who had been identified as suspicious, and that individual was attempting to be tracked down.
At what time?
I don't have a specific timeline other than to tell
Director,
you,
it's been 9 days.
I understand
At what
that.
time?
I want to make sure that I give you factual information, sir.
Director, have you talked to the agents on the ground that day?
Yes, I have.
You've talked to all of them?
Mm-hmm.
Your senior team has talked to every agent that was on the ground that day?
Yes, we have.
Have they all corroborated the same time they identified the shooter, or they were made aware of the shooter either by attendees in the crowd or a local police department?
There are a number of reports of when those times were made.
Was it
those
5 minutes
notifications.
before the first shot rang out?
No,
Generally speaking, was it 10 minutes before the first shot rang out?
no.
Was it 15 minutes before the first shot rang out?
It was less than that time frame when it was identified as a threat.
How many days before the shooting took place did Secret Service actually do their advance work to secure the facility that the rally was going to be held at?
5 days.
In the 5 days prior, when the security advance team did their work, did they identify the rooftop as a potential threat?
Again, I'm pulling those reports and that information.
It's been 9
to
days,
conduct those
Madam Director.
interviews.
Did they notice a rooftop 150 yards away that was a potential threat? Yes or no?
I am certain that the rooftop was noticed. I am pulling the reports.
What was the security parameters around securing that rooftop? What did they do?
There was overwatch provided for that rooftop.
Did Overwatch fail?
I am waiting to hear what the results of the investigation were so that I can identify where the failure was.
There's been a little bit of dancing around as it relates to this being a suspicious person and this being a situation that was perceived to be a threat. And it seems as if there's a different analysis that takes place. One of my questions has to do with if you have any bias training that your officers undergo. And the reason that I ask that, because as a civil rights lawyer, I have learned so many times in having to deal with law enforcement that there usually is not a perception of a threat when it is a young white male, even if they are carrying a long gun. Yet a lot of times, at least in this country, when it comes to law enforcement, there is a perceived threat just by somebody having a little bit more melanin in their skin. So I'm curious to know, because a lot of times, one of the things that we have consistently pushed for on my side of things, and when I say my side, is once we are looking at a tragedy in which law enforcement made an error, is the bias training and whether or not our officers are getting it. So I'm curious to know, in some of the training that you talk about that is part of your budget, has bias training been part of that?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
How did a 20-year-old loner with a week's notice pick the absolute best location to assassinate President Trump when the entire Secret Service missed it? Director Cheadle, in your leadership, your agency got outsmarted and outmaneuvered by a 20-year-old. How can we have any confidence that you could stop trained professionals from a nefarious nation state?
Those are absolutely questions that we need to have.
I know they're
answers
questions,
to.
but the fact of the matter is we can't have that confidence. Director, do you have the ability personally, and do you have the authority to beef up security of any of your protectees?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So were you also aware there was a credible threat President Trump was facing? He was facing a heightened security threat to a foreign adversary?
Yes.
Okay. So given that there was an increased threat to President Trump's life, was he provided a full security complement akin to what a sitting U.S. president would receive?
He was provided a full complement of security based on the threat assessment that we had.
That's not my question.
And the venue.
My question is, if he'd been the sitting president, would he have had the same security he had on July 13th, or would have been beefed up?
There is a difference between the sitting
So he
president
didn't. So your answer is he didn't.
and continuity of government and the responsibility
So he
that we
did
have.
not. Okay, there wasn't a CAT team, a full CAT team on site. There wasn't counter-surveillance teams on site. But this is the thing. You just said you had the ability to beef up the security. You knew about the threat, and you didn't. And that's as telling as it is chilling. We have satellite images from the Butler Fairgrounds. Have you visited the site?
No, I have not.
9 days and you have not visited the site. You should have been there that night.
The biggest failure of this agency in 43 years. This happened on her watch, and she didn't even go down there to the site. This is all very suspicious, by the way. And hey, if this could happen to Trump, this could happen to any candidate, any former president, any of their protectees. That's why it's very important for them to get down to the bottom of this to make sure that everybody is protected. They almost lost a protectee under her leadership, and she didn't even bother to go down to the scene and check it out. We're talking about the director of the Secret Service. She's over everybody.
Did you talk to, that evening, did you talk to the team, the heroes that surrounded the president? Did you call them that night?
They were still operational work.
So that's an answer is no. Did you call them the next day?
President. Yes, I spoke with.
You called them the very next day, not the day of, or was it 72 hours after?
I don't know the timeline, but I spoke with
Okay,
them
because you're under oath.
immediately following.
I think it was 72 hours after. You waited 3 days. What is immediately clear is that there are a number of structures that need to be secured. Of these, Director, other than the first, immediate 4, what's the most dangerous site that should have been secured? Because security 101, you got to mitigate the high ground.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what the next most dangerous site? What was the closest structure to the president, other than the 4 immediate ones that you had your counter sniper teams on?
There are a number of structures around that event site.
You know who the shooter knew? The shooter has visited the site 2 more times than you have, and he had a drone, and he picked the AGR building. So you said, do you remember in an ABC interview you did that you didn't have people on the roof of the AGR building because you were worried about safety because of the slope?
I recall that statement.
Okay. Does the Secret Service have written policy you can share with us about slope roofs?
No.
Okay. So why'd you act like there was one? Because isn't your practice to comment on enormous events of enormous national implications when you're ignorant of the facts? That's rhetorical. So here's this thing with the slopes. You go all up to like 1812, you can go to a 112, which is about as flat as you can get without it being completely flat. And you're saying that there was a danger, safety concern there. But the problem is, Director, you put your counter snipers on a 312 roof, which is steeper than the 112. And by the way, the 112 is ADA compliant. You can build a ramp for a wheelchair on a 112 roof. So these are nothing but pathetic excuses, and they make no sense, and they're a bunch of cow dung. All the law enforcement I've spoken with over the last 9 days are amazed that the AGR rooftop was not secure. You want to know why? Because it's dangerous. I have never had any long gun training in my life. I own an AR-15, and last time I shot it one time my whole life. It was 6 years ago. That is until Saturday, where we recreated the events in Savoy, Texas. We recreated what happened in Butler. I was lying prone on a sloped roof at 130 yards at 6:30 at night. And I knew that he had a scope. I didn't know what kind, red dot or magnified. So I shot 8 rounds from both. You know what the result was? 15 out of 16 kill shots. And the one I missed would have hit the president's ear. That's a 94% success rate. And that shooter was a better shot than me. It is a miracle President Trump wasn't killed. Corey Compatore's life is over because that damn shooter made it on the roof. And it wasn't the roof that was dangerous. It was a nut job on top of the roof. You know what else is dangerous? I believe your horrifying ineptitude and your lack of skilled leadership is a disgrace. Your obfuscating today is shameful. And you should be fired immediately and go back to Garden Doritos. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
That was a mic drop moment. He told her to go back to Garden Doritos. For those who didn't know, Kimberly Cheadle, aka Kimmy Cheetos, was over security at PepsiCo before her appointment to lead the Secret Service. Cheetos is one of the brands under PepsiCo. Doritos is too. This is why the congressman told her to go back to Garden Doritos and get out of DC. No, seriously though, she did have experience with the Secret Service. She was with them for 27 years in total. She used to shuffle paperwork in Atlanta and help with investigations there. But get this, Kimmy Cheetos was also a part of the Biden security team years ago when he served as vice president. And it was Jill Biden who helped Kimmy Cheetos get this top position to run the agency after Biden became president. A week and a half after the biggest Secret Service failure in 43 years and many calls for this woman to resign, Kimmy Cheetos finally stepped down after initially being defiant, saying that she wouldn't resign.
The director of the Secret Service resigned today, one day after admitting the assassination attempt on Donald Trump was the agency's most significant operational failure in decades. As CBS's Scott McFarland reports, Kimberly Cheadle drew sharp criticism from both parties.
10 days after the historic failure in Butler, Pennsylvania, Kimberly Cheadle resigned as U.S. Secret Service director, writing to colleagues this incident does not define us and that she didn't want to be a distraction. In a statement, President Biden said Cheadle had shown incredible integrity.
I take full responsibility for any security lapse.
I think it's kind of a slap in the face for everybody who was there that their safety was put on the line from their lack of competence.
An acting Secret Service director, Ron Rowe, will now lead the agency. In the meantime, the U.S. House has launched a bipartisan task force to investigate the assassination attempt, with the Secret Service's own review, Nora, due in about 2 months.
Scott McFarland, thank you very much.
And just like that, Kimmy Cheetos is out. I wouldn't stop here though. This is really criminal on so many levels. Kimmy Cheetos should be locked up along with whoever else was behind all of this. It's a lot more to this story, and no doubt she is obviously involved in some sort of cover-up. Let's go ahead and get the conversation started. Let me know what you think about all of this below. Special thank you to my sister Starlet. I appreciate you, Starlet, for all of your support. Don't forget that you can support this channel as well. Links to Cash App and PayPal are below. Ladies, fellas, want a balanced analysis, want the truth from a woman's perspective? Then you're going to want to subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to like and share.